All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation, CP the franchise here. Special edition of KFTV. We've been going through KFTV's Knicks training camp tip-off with a number of great guests, and we're going to close this one out with my guy Fred Katz of The Athletic, covers the Knicks for The Athletic, reporting live from Charleston, South Carolina at the Citadel. Fred, welcome back to KnicksFanTV, man. How you doing? Morning.
I'm great. I'm thrilled to be on. I'm thrilled to be part of a lineup that you say is great, but really just has like Ian Begley and some other great people, and then this random ass reporter. So I don't know about that. Like, you got Begley, that's awesome.
Yeah,
but like, I don't know about me. But I'm thrilled to be on. You obviously have an amazing show. So
absolutely, man. Well, listen, our pods are always insightful, man. That's why the people love having you on, and myself included. What's the vibe like at camp, man? I mean, for you as a person on the beat, you were covering this team in Tarrytown for a little bit. Now they went back to their old stomping grounds at the Citadel. What's the vibe like? What's the atmosphere like?
It's a little different, I would say, than when they do training camp up in Tarrytown. Like, it's more, it definitely feels more relaxed. Like, you it almost feels like a transition into the start of the season. It's my 9th year doing an NBA beat for the full time, and I've actually never covered a team that's gone away for training camp, even though it's not uncommon. Like, probably a third of the league does it, but I've never done it. And it definitely feels like more of a transition, and you could tell the players feel the same. Like, it feels like more of like, okay, you're in the off season, but then you go to this really nice, extremely charming town where like every blade of grass is perfectly in place, like Charleston, and it's right on the water, and there's an awesome food scene. I've had 2 amazing meals.
Nice.
I'm sure they have too. And it's like, you feel like you're kind of like a way to begin, and they're doing like 2-a-days and stuff to start, but it's just like a different vibe. Like, Tibbs even said the number one reason why he likes going away for training camp is he thinks it's good for team bonding to start the year. I'm like, I get that. That makes perfect sense. I totally see why that would be a thing.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Has he, based on the sessions that you've been involved in, has he mentioned any sort of kind of history behind the team being at Charleston, or back, his recollection when he was assistant coach with the team?
Yeah, I mean, they've been going to Charleston, like you said, they haven't done it the last few years. I think that was mostly just like a COVID thing, to be honest, because Tibbs generally likes to go away for training camp, and the team has often done Charleston. Honestly, I think the reason that they just keep doing Charleston is just because they really like Charleston. Like, I think they think that's really the reason why. I don't think it's like, we have a good history there and things are easy for us in Charleston. I think they went to Charleston 30 years ago or whenever it was. They were like, wow, this is a great place to do training camp. Let's just do it. And everybody had fun. Everybody worked hard, and they're like, let's just do it here all the time. So I really think that's kind of all there is to it.
In previous years at training camp, there have been images that have kind of leaked where Tibbs has kind of had his top 10 priorities for the team. Is that up there this year? Have you seen what it looks like? What's on the list?
It's not up there. I will assume it will be up there in the Knicks' actual practice facility in New York. But as of now, they're practicing at the Citadel, military academy, and they're using their facilities. So I haven't seen anything that they have put up, but I bet there will be something at the practice facility in New York.
Yeah,
because there usually is.
For sure. Well, there's a couple of areas where, players have alluded to it, or Tibbs has, over the course of this week. And let's start with Julius, because on Wednesday or Tuesday, rather, Julius, in his session with the media, talked about wanting to be a more efficient shooter. We know that's always been one of the negatives to his game, his shot selection, his shot diet, his efficiency. His efficiency has plummeted in the playoffs. While they did dial back the long twos last year, opting for more threes, again, once it got into the postseason, the efficiency numbers kind of dipped off. How do you see him improving on that over the course of the season and into the postseason? Is it more shot selection and decision-making? Is it the team, again, finding him in better spots to get him the ball in more comfort areas? How do you see him really improving in that area?
I mean, first of all, he did a really good job during the regular season being efficient last year. So it's not like that was like 2 years ago, that was obviously a huge problem. when he walks away with like a 51% true shooting. Last year, he was up to like 58. I mean, that's a good number for a high usage player. And it was because really of the shot selection more than the shot taking, like you were just saying. I mean, he took more than 8 threes a game, and he only hit 34% of them. But Tibbs always tells the team, he always refers to it the same way: value of shots. That's what he says all the time. That's his terminology: value of shots. You want threes, you want shots at the rim, you want free throws. You don't want those long twos. And what Tibbs always tells the team is their goal is to be at least league average percentage on high volume from three. And that's basically what Julius did. Like if Julius, they don't want Julius taking 6 threes instead of 8 threes just so he can hit 36%. However, one of the things that Julius delved into when he talked about being more efficient was he thinks he understands the game better. And the one specificity that he gave was he thinks it's not about taking more threes, it's about taking better threes. And the first thing that came to my mind was Julius about once or twice a game will rely on that step back, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like that's a horrible shot. And if you've got 6 seconds left on the shot clock, that's fine. Like, put that up. Like, if you shoot 30% on that shot and there's 4 seconds left on the shot clock, like that's 0.9 points per possession. Like that's a fine shot at the end of the shot clock. I'm not saying he should just eliminate those shots completely, but those sorts of shots, the pull-ups, he took 4.9 catch and shoot threes a game last year. And he took 3.5 pull-ups. So what if there's a way where Julius still could take more than 8 threes a game, but instead of taking 3.5 pull-ups, he took like 1.5 pull-ups. And all of a sudden he's taking 6.5 catch and shoot threes a game. His percentage is going to go up because he's much better on catch and shoot than he is off the dribble, is pretty much every player in the league. So I think kind of a redistribution of how he can get those threes is something that is totally realistic, is totally on the table. Whether it happens, I have no idea. But if you want to say, like, okay, here's a goal that you can set out for Julius Randle realistically, and he can keep the same volume of threes and at a higher percentage of them, I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I think it's realistic, if only because you look at this team and they have clearly delved into playmakers. Every single player on this team, except for Mitchell Robinson, can do stuff with the ball.
Right.
Every single one, including Isaiah Hartenstien. So Julius shouldn't have to carry that sort of burden of dribbling so much, facilitating so much. DiVincenzo's in there now. He can do stuff. Josh Hart can do stuff. RJ can do stuff. Obviously, Quickley and Brunson can do stuff. Like, they have guys who can do stuff, which should allow him to get more catch and shoots. I think that would be a good, realistic goal for him during the year, and I think that should probably help his percentages and his efficiency.
Should we expect to see a healthier diet of a two-man game between Brunson and Randle? I think I was looking at one of the stats on PBP stats where 60 of Julius's made threes came off of Jalen Brunson. So do you think we will see a bit more of an evolution in their two-man game next season?
Sure. I don't see why not. Year 2 together, more familiar. I think, there was this quiet thing that kind of went around the locker room at the beginning of last year. And I want to be sure that I explain it the right way. I think there were guys who struggled. Nobody explicitly told me this, but you could read between the lines and you knew it was true, that there were guys who struggled to play with Brunson in the beginning. And it wasn't because they didn't like playing with him. And it wasn't because they thought he was selfish or something. It was because the same moves that Brunson uses to totally deke out every single defender would also deke out his teammates because they weren't used to it. And I know that there were guys in Dallas who kind of felt similarly. And you just have to get used to it. You have to realize, damn, this timing is weird. It's kind of like if you have like an awesome, if you're baseball, like you're a baseball fan, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's an awesome knuckleball pitcher, he's really hard to hit, but he's also really hard to catch.
Yeah.
Like you have a knuckleball pitcher. There are catchers who are literally like knuckleball catchers. Remember when the Red Sox had Doug Mirabelli? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Doug Mirabelli was Tim Wakefield's
personal catcher.
R.I.P. Tim Wakefield.
R.I.P. Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah.
And Tim Wakefield was this really good knuckleballer for the Red Sox. And they let him walk. They let Mirabelli, who was this kind of inconsequential, seemingly catcher, walk in free agency. And I think Josh Paul was their backup catcher, and he could not catch knuckleball.
Yeah.
He just couldn't catch a knuckleball, and he was just having pass balls every game. It looked like a little league game. And so before a game, they then traded for Doug Mirabelli, like 3 weeks into the season, the day of a Tim Wakefield start, and they had to police escort him like from the airport so he could make it to the game in time, because it was so important to get the guy who actually knew Wakefield's timing and knew how to catch the knuckleball. And I feel like Jalen Brunson is a basketball knuckleballer. You know, I feel like that's what he is. And there were guys at the beginning of the year who I think struggled to get the timing down because they were like, damn, this guy is just so deceptive. I covered Russell Westbrook, and there were teammates who felt similarly about him, but he's like on the opposite end of the spectrum. Where it's like he moves so fast and you just don't know what he's going to do next. You don't know where the pass is going to come from because he's going to throw it from these crazy angles and all that. But it has a similar effect. And so I think this year, like, even if you were not blown away by having to acclimate to Brunson at the beginning of the year, I just think you start to get the timing down better as you play more with him. I think we saw Julius and Jalen be much better in the second half of last year together than in the first half. I think we saw them be a lot better. So like I think we'll see something better with Jalen and probably a lot of the guys on that roster because he takes a little bit.
Another year of chemistry with the floor general. Absolutely looking forward to that. And on the Brunson topic, when I go through these season previews and I talk to people and ask them about who they feel like is going to take the biggest leap, you hear Grimes. Grimes is my candidate. Some people say Quick. But Brunson is not the name that I've heard. And on your recent podcast on the Athletic NBA show, you said it could be the floor general that could take another step. And I'm wondering, what does that look like? Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, so I've written this too. Like there are important people with the Knicks who are just flat out insistent that Jalen Brunson is not at his peak.
Wow.
That he is going to be better. To be clear, I haven't seen what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know. But there are important people with the Knicks who are just like dead set. Like, no, you don't get it.
Wow.
This is who Jalen Brunson is. And the points that have been made to me, and they're valid points, are, after January 4th, he averaged 28 a game on 52% shooting from the field and 45% shooting from three. That's 3 months. That's not a little hot streak in January.
Yeah.
That's half the season that he did that. And then he goes into the Miami series, into the playoffs, and he's really good at the start of the playoffs. And by the end of the Miami series, the dude is just impossible to stop, right? Like he is 32 in game 4 of the Miami series, 38 in game 5, and he plays all 48 minutes, and then 41 in that closeout game. And obviously they end up losing that series, and they lose 2 out of 3 of those games. But everyone who watched those games knows that like Brunson was the one who made sure that it was actually competitive that whole way through. And there are people with the Knicks who are just insistent that, like, last year Brunson was a little short of being an all-star, fell short of being all-NBA. And then you get to the end of that Miami series, and Eric Spoelstra is saying stuff like how, literally on the record in a press conference, like, what was the quote? How is this dude not all NBA?
Yep.
I think that was the exact quote. How is this dude not all NBA? I mean, Eric Spoelstra doesn't just say stuff, just say it. And I think the answer of how is this dude not all NBA is because Jalen Brunson actually had a good amount of improvement during the season last year. Like, a lot of the time, the guy who gets MIP is someone like Lauri Markkanen. Who, by the way, I didn't have the vote. I would have voted for Markkanen.
Yeah, likewise.
He was great last year, and he was the most improved because he was way worse than Jalen Brunson 2 years ago. But Markkanen showed up, and from day one, we're like, oh, wow, this guy got way better over the summer. When Brunson, he showed up on day one, we were like, wow, this guy got way better over the summer. But then if you look at him in May and you compare that to November, you're like, wow, this guy got way better over the season too. So I think there are people who expect, like, that 28-point scoring on 50, 40, 80 shooting, the stuff that he was doing to the Heat at the end of the Miami series, when he's not just putting up those numbers, like obviously those are good point totals, and the assist totals were around 8, 9, 10 in those games. And the efficiency was quite good. And obviously those are good, but it's like, he's not just doing those numbers. He's putting them up against Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Eric Spoelstra, like the best there is at each of those positions. Right. And he's doing it while the entire defense is just locked in on him every single possession because they're horrified of him. And he's still putting up those kinds of numbers on that kind of efficiency. And I think there are people who think like that wasn't a Jalen Brunson hot streak. Like that is now who Jalen Brunson is. So, I mean, there are people with the Knicks who are like 27, 28 a game on super efficient shooting, is better passing, better chemistry with his teammates, is totally within the cards for him. And then you look at it and you're like, he's 27.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there are guys who make another leap from 26 to 27. Sure. So I'm not ruling it out. I mean, these are smart people who see what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not ruling it out. And there is a trend where Brunson has gotten legitimately better every single year of his career. It's not just that he got better last year. He has gotten better every single year of his career. And so maybe it continues. Trends tend to be trends for a reason.
Yeah, that is true, man. You just can't count him out. And another leap for Jalen Brunson, this town is going to go insane. And as you mentioned, he seemed to have gotten better from the beginning of this calendar year, the second half of the season on through. And he did that through a myriad of injuries, right? He had the mysterious foot injury. He had the hand injury. He comes back. He puts up 40-plus on the Cavs. Then he goes into the playoffs, and with the Cavs and the Heat, two of the top two defenses in the East, had no problem. You know, outside of Jokic and Murray, was the only one to really solve that Heat defense. But as we saw in that playoff matchup against the Heat, as they started to key in on him and completely disregarding the Knicks shooters, that's where things kind of got a little bit dicey. And as Tom Thibodeau has mentioned in his training camp presser, three-point accuracy is something that the team wants to improve upon. They were top 10 in the league in makes and attempts last year, 24th in accuracy. And even though the starting five has had some success, what do you think about, the most optimal lineups to ensure that we have some snipers out there? I'm sure DiVincenzo will help, but how do you see them kind of navigating the rotations to make sure that we have adequate shooting out there when Brunson's operating?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be an issue no matter what. And the reason why is because as much as Mitchell Robinson helps you in so many other aspects of the game, he's just there clogging up the lane. Like I have asked people who work in analytics if they can get me this stat, like work in analytics for teams, and no one's really done it. I think they can get it, but it would take really long. And I want to know what percentage of the time that Mitchell Robinson is on the court when he's on offense that he spends with at least 1 foot in the paint.
Yeah.
And I want to know where that ranks in the league, because I'll bet that he is number 1 in the league. And the reason why is not just because Mitch isn't like doing stuff with the ball away from the rim, and he's there for lobs and he's there for putbacks and all of that. It's because they really go out of their way to weaponize him as an offensive rebounder. Part of the reason, like, he's a great offensive rebounder on his own. Obviously, he's probably the best in the Eastern Conference. Like, him and Steven Adams are probably the two best offensive rebounders in the league. However, the Knicks, I shouldn't say however, I should say so. So the Knicks lean all the way into it. That means keeping him around the rim a lot, which also means clogging up driving lanes.
Right.
So I think just with him there, there's going to be there's going to be a lack of spacing. And then you add on the fact that, like, Julius will take them and can make them, but he just barely doesn't make enough to make people stick to him under all circumstances. And Brunson is so good that defenses will lose their minds and just be like, I'm getting the hell away from this dude. Like I'm leaving Brunson. I'm leaving Randle because I can't let Brunson beat us. There's no way. Same thing with RJ. So I could see them playing around with lineups where RJ plays less and DiVincenzo is there. I could see them playing around with lineups where maybe RJ is the 4. I know we all have like Josh Hart written in as the 4, but I don't know what position Josh Hart plays because he's not a stretch 4.
Yeah, you're right.
Like
right.
physically, he's a small 4, but it's not like he's because he's small, he's going to be shooting threes. Like he's not PJ Tucker in the corners.
Yeah.
You know, and he doesn't even really want to shoot threes. Like that's not his game. He wants to be cutting. He wants to be setting screens and rolling. He wants to be getting out in transition. Like he doesn't really want to shoot threes. You know, that was a huge thing for him in Portland, that he became really hesitant to shoot threes during his time in Portland. And we even saw that at times during the playoffs.
Absolutely.
When the shot wasn't falling. He was just hesitant to put up threes. For as aggressive of a player he is,
it's gunshot.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to see because he's an insanely aggressive player in literally every other way.
Yeah.
And then in that one, he's like really hesitant.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing for a dude who's like so confident in his game and who's obviously a good player. But I could see them. Here's the thing. They have 9 guys in their rotation and they're all good. So I could see Tibbs just rolling with whoever's good on that night to close games.
Yeah.
And I could see them having like a ridiculous amount of closing lineup combinations. I have a feeling that they're not just going to like run out the starting lineup to close just because of it.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think if RJ's not playing well or if RJ's getting hurt on defense, I think we're going to see Hart there, or we're going to see, DiVincenzo there, or we're going to see Quickley there or something. I think if Grimes isn't hitting his threes, or if, maybe Grimes is struggling against a really good defender, we're going to see Hart come out there and take him on. I think whoever steps up amongst that trio of wings and guards there, I think whoever steps up as the best wing defender amongst them, or perimeter defender, I should say, amongst them, is the one who is going to most consistently close, because they all do kind of different stuff.
Yeah.
And they're all good to very good players. And I think what's going to be huge for them is ball pressure. They need someone who's going to stop dudes on the perimeter. That's going to be a big thing for their defense. And if somebody emerges as that dude, I could see Tibbs sticking with that guy because it'll help their defense a lot.
All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation, CP the franchise here. And I got a big announcement for you guys. We want to welcome BetUS as the official sportsbook sponsor of KnicksFanTV. BetUS is the leading online sportsbook that offers a wide range of sports betting and casino games. It's reliable, it's secure, and they offer excellent customer service. They have a number of options to choose from between pregame betting, live betting, parlays, and prop bets. Now, for the Knicks, there's a couple of options that you can bet on right now before the season starts. How about the in-season tournament odds? Right now, the Knicks are a plus 2,000 to win the in-season tournament. They're also a plus 800 to win the Atlantic Division. What do you think? Even though the Celtics got better, Philadelphia coming back into the pack, Knicks are at a plus 800. Can the Knicks win the East? Well, if you think so, put your money where your mouth is. The Knicks are currently at a plus 1,600 on BetUS's sportsbook to win the Eastern Conference. And lastly, can they take home the gold? The Knicks going into this season as a plus 5,000 to raise the Larry O'Brien Trophy at the end of the season to be the champs. The world champs or the national champs, but the champs. What do you think? Use our promo code today to sign up and get a bonus match of 125%. It is a great deal. Shout out to BetUS, once again, the official sportsbook sponsor of KnicksFanTV. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you on the closing lineups and how that can change. I mean, we in the first year in the Tibbs, that COVID shortened season, we saw that here and there. There were times where he would bench RJ in the fourth, and maybe it was Burks, maybe it was Bullock that would play, and you're starting to look at it and say, okay, it's not really guaranteed, that closing lineup. And then 2 years ago, it was even more. It was Quickley. He was Mr. Fourth Quarter for that team. Last year, once Hart got here, I don't think there was a fourth quarter where he didn't close a game. I mean, from that first game at home against Utah, he was in that closing lineup. And so there's going to be a lot of guys jockeying for that position. DiVincenzo is the one that I'm most intrigued about for a couple of reasons. You mentioned the on-ball defense, but also his ability as a spot-up shooter and in catch and shoots, two areas, as we mentioned, where the Knicks could use some help. I mean, DiVincenzo last year, 91st percentile as a spot-up shooter, 94th in catch and shoot open threes. So I'm thinking, is there a way here where DiVincenzo gets a lot of those minutes with Brunson, and maybe even in crunch time if he's needed on both sides of the ball?
I think that is absolutely in the cards. Yeah. I mean, I really think this year's team is going to be a meritocracy because they have so many. There are going to be guys who you're going to look at the box score after a game and you're going to be like, that guy played 14 minutes. That's a problem. And then you're going to have to go through and be like, okay, well, where is minutes coming from? Because if Quentin Grimes plays 14 minutes, and you're saying Quentin Grimes played 16 minutes tonight, that's a problem. How's Quentin Grimes play 16 minutes? Okay, well, then, give him 10 more minutes. You have to take 10 minutes away from somebody else. Who are you taking them from? Because you're getting 48 at center from Hartenstien and Mitch. You're getting 36 at power forward from Julius, approximately. And you're getting 36 approximately at point guard from Brunson. And that leaves you with only like 22 minutes a game, 24 minutes a game for the rest of the guys.
Right.
And someone is going to have to take a cut, if not multiple guys. That's just the way that time works. They're going to have to realize that there are certain guys who you look at it and you're like, wow, Quickley played 18 minutes tonight, but it's because DiVincenzo deserved 29. And then you're going to say, wow, DiVincenzo played 16 minutes tonight. You're going to say it's because Quickley deserved 32. I think guys are going to kind of be going up and down the pecking order throughout the season, depending on how they're playing. And it's kind of hard to predict how it's going to go because, quite honestly, they're like very similar players in terms of their abilities. Like if we're doing like a power ranking of Knicks best players, choosing between DiVincenzo, Grimes, Quickley, Hart, and RJ. Yeah. Like you could pull 10 people who really know the Knicks well on that, and you might get 10 different orders. And so I don't really know how it's going to go, but I do think it's going to be a meritocracy. Like I don't think like just because RJ was the number 3 pick, he's going to get the most minutes. I don't think that's going to be the case. If he plays the best, he'll get the most minutes.
Once again, KFTV's training camp tip-off, special guest Fred Katz, who covers the Knicks for The Athletic. And as we talk about the difficulty that Tom Thibodeau is going to have in terms of juggling this rotation, especially in the closing lineups, and we think about leaps, Quentin Grimes, spoke about him a little bit earlier. The fan base is very enthusiastic about year 3 for Grimes. We're seeing the workout videos, the JJ Redick workout videos, and endorsement has been well received by the Knicks fans. He's working out with Penny Hardaway, my favorite basketball player. I'm very enthused about that. So the question becomes, if we're hoping for a leap from Grimes, and you have the addition of DiVincenzo with closing minutes not being guaranteed, and he's playing in a starting lineup where he's playing alongside a lot of high-usage players and RJ and Julius and Jalen Brunson, where does the leap come from for Grimes?
I think defensively, there can be a leap. I think maybe he can. The Knicks used him with so much versatility defensively last year in terms of just the players that he was guarding, right?
Yeah.
You look at those stats in terms of like how often you guard the other team's best player, and Grimes was guarding the other team's highest usage player on the floor for a higher percentage of his minutes than I think almost any player in the league. He was definitely top 5 in that stat last year. I think Dylan Brooks with Memphis was number 1. I forget exactly where Grimes finished up, but he was somewhere in the top 5, which means the Knicks were really relying on him. And he was guarding small guards like Trae Young. And then there were other nights where they were having him on Pascal Siakam.
Yeah.
And those are just, and every player in between, right? And those are very different players. So if Grimes can get his footwork to a place, and he's had really good moments against Trae Young, actually. Like, he has done good jobs against Trae Young. But there have been other times where Trae has gotten by him. You know, that game in Atlanta last year where they scored, what was it, 296 points?
Yeah.
Like, it was...
Yeah.
Like Trae was getting by him. That was not a good defensive night. If Grimes can gain some consistency with his footwork against small guards, maybe navigating those ball screens and being able to stick in front of them, while also gaining some strength against the Siakams of the world, so that he can, like that night that Siakam went off against them, he was on Siakam for a little bit, and Siakam was getting to the rim a lot. And if he can gain some strength, gain some positioning, have some ability to not necessarily get as bullied by those bigger guys, that is so important for him, and it's so important for their defense. Something that I think I'm probably going to write for Friday is something about the Knicks, specifically their turnover strategy on defense. Tibbs defenses normally are not big turnover defenses, even when they're like awesome, like the epic Bulls defenses. Like, those were low. They did not force a lot of turnovers, and it's by scheme. And the reason why is because Tibbs believes that turnovers start with ball pressure, and you have to stay in your place. And then when you get excellent ball pressure and you get the ball handler rattled, that's when you can go and you can make your decisions. Now, one thing I thought was really interesting about their playoff run last year was honestly how adaptable they were. They made a ton of adjustments in how they played basketball. How they played in that Cleveland series, it was a completely different team. Like, you remember all the guard screens that they were doing? They had more guard screens in that series than they had probably in the whole damn regular season.
Sure.
Like, it was crazy. Every single play by the end of that Cleveland series was just quickly coming up to set a screen for Brunson, right? It was when they never did that during the regular season. It was actually a criticism that they never did that during the regular season. And then they just, on a dime, they totally changed who they were. And defensively, they very much changed who they were too, because they were so much more aggressive in passing lanes. And when I asked Tibbs about that, he talked about it all starting with ball pressure. Their ball pressure in that series was really good, which allowed them to get out, get turnovers, and get out in transition, which Tibbs really wants them to do. He loves it when they run off of those live ball turnovers. And they really tried to implement that for the Cleveland series. Like, I know behind the scenes, that was one of their big, you asked for like the biggest focus points for the season that are hanging up. I know behind the scenes, one of their huge defensive focal points heading into that series was like, how can we force turnovers against this Cleveland team, which by the way, I did not have a lot of turnovers on offense last year. And they did a great job making them uncomfortable. If Tibbs believes that turnovers all start with ball pressure, then someone's got to be providing the ball pressure. And I do think Grimes is your best option for that. Guys tend to get better at defense as they get older. You just understand the game better. You become more physically adept. Like, when you're 23, you have closer to an NBA body than you do at 21. And when you're 25, you probably have more than one at 23. And the other part of it is Josh Hart can be a ball hawk in passing lanes if you let him. So can Dante DiVincenzo.
Yep.
That was a really, really big element of DiVincenzo defensively with Golden State last year. That was one of his things. He's really good, actually, at picking his spots and getting into passing lanes. And if Tibbs feels comfortable with that ball pressure, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Hart get a little bit more into passing lanes, because now they're going to have him for the whole year. DiVincenzo get a little bit into passing lanes too. And maybe those turnovers start to spike. Maybe that's a reason to see how Grimes does with the bench. You know, see maybe if you rotate Grimes as your guy with the bench, you let Quickley run the bench unit, and then you have DiVincenzo and you have Hart just kind of ball hawking on the wings. Like, maybe that's something that could work. That unit is going to play fast. Like, I'll tell you that. Like, that bench unit is going to play fast, and if they can get turnovers, they're going to play even faster. So maybe that's a lineup that we could see as an intriguing one. But I think a lot of that starts with Grimes.
Yeah.
A lot of that starts with Grimes or maybe Josh Hart, because someone's got to step up as like the dude guarding the perimeter if they're going to be a legitimately good defense. Because I think that's what they're missing. They don't have a big wing. It's just going to shut guys down. It's not there.
They just don't have the big wing. And with Grimes offensively, well, on a previous episode that you had came on, we talked about his quick decision making. He was at the top, near the top of the league in terms of quick pass percentage. We see him when he attack closeouts, put the ball on the floor. Sometimes he would find Mitchell Robinson for those wraparound passes, or he would make that quick decision. But there were other times where he was a bit unsure of himself. Sometimes he would defer. Defer back to Julius, defer back to Jalen. But it seems like the team wants him to be a bit more aggressive in looking for quality shots for himself. How do you see that playing out?
I don't know if it's going to happen, not because he's not capable of it. We're talking Grimes.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, Grimes. Yep.
Yeah, not because he's not capable of it. That's the stuff where I'm just like, I don't know if I see that happening. I will say I could see maybe more catch and shoot threes, but in terms of like Grimes running pick and rolls, all that kind of stuff, like I said, there's so many guys who can create on this team. And if Grimes is going to be in the starting lineup, that's just not going to be his job. Like when you have Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson out there, like you don't want Grimes initiating your offense all the time. Like you have Jalen Brunson, like let him carry the big load. It's okay. You have Julius Randle, All-NBA 2 out of the last 3 years. Let him carry the big load. It's okay. What Grimes needs to do is he needs to be spacing beyond the 3-point line, and he needs to be making those really quick decisions.
Right.
And that's what he's been really good at. Now, I'm not saying that he should never run anything, but I do think the balance is basically going to be like that's going to be his role. And then if you get late in the shot clock, maybe Grimes can do stuff. And obviously, I agree. He's great at attacking closeouts.
Yeah.
He's so good. What he does is he looks at the defender's feet and hips. And so he knows which way he's going to drive. He actually doesn't even predetermine which way he's going to drive. So the defender's feet and hips. And then as soon as he catches the ball, he looks there and that tells him, okay, I'm going right or I'm going left. And he's so good at getting by his guy when they close out hard on him. Honestly, the thing that I'm waiting on for Grimes this year, this is my personal opinion. I talked about like other people having their opinions about Brunson having a breakout or whatever. This is mine. I'm just waiting for Grimes to shoot 40 from 3.
Yeah.
Like I kind of don't really understand how he hasn't shot 40 from 3.
Well, where was he at?
Everything on his jumper is perfect.
He was at 38 last year.
38. I think.
Yeah.
And I'm just
26
waiting
in the
for him
playoffs.
And he had a couple of cold streaks.
Yeah.
And he had some really huge hot streaks. Yeah, I mean, he went real cold in the playoffs. Like for as great as he was in game 5 of that Miami series, he missed a lot of open shots in that series.
Yeah.
And that was part of why Miami went to such an extreme strategy of helping off their perimeter shooters. Like it started because the Knicks don't have a lot of 3-point shooters, but it continued because the dudes who aren't 3-point shooters actually hit an even worse percentage than they normally do. Like Grimes wasn't hitting his threes, and Quickley before he got hurt wasn't hitting his threes, and Hart often wasn't taking the threes. And then his 3-point shot fell off too. He wasn't really hitting them. And so if you're not going to make them pay, especially with the guys who are really good shooters like Grimes, they're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Grimes hitting his threes is really important, but I don't know. I watch his warm-ups and he hits everything. and when you watch a dude warm up, sometimes you can tell like, okay, he's got something. Like when you for example, like I'd watch Miles McBride his rookie year. And he was coming off a college season in which he had shot well from 3. And I'm watching him warm ups. I'm looking at his jumper. I'm like, it knuckles too much. Like that's not going to work right now in the NBA. He's got to fix that. His elbow's all off. It's really inconsistent, and his form's not repeatable in these warm ups. Like that's not going to work in an NBA game. It's just not. And the jump shot struggled, even though he had a high percentage in college. Grimes, you watch, and it's just completely repeatable every single time. He is going up the exact same way. He is landing in the same place. His balance is excellent. His release is beautiful. Like I'm just waiting on that dude to get to 40. And we've seen like the last 10 games of the regular season, when the Knicks basically had their seating locked up and he was taking like 8, 9 threes a game and hitting 45% of them. It's a 10-game streak. I'm not saying he's going to take 9 threes a game and hit 45% of them over the course of the season, but like not many guys are capable of that kind of hot streak.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just waiting on like 6 threes a game at 40+%. I really do think that's going to happen. I really do think that's going to be the norm for him. It should be like that. That's a place he should get to.
Certainly hope so, man, because if we're talking about where the Knicks hope to get to in this season, Quentin Grimes shooting as well as his defense is going to be very important. And once again, we're talking to Fred Katz, who covers the Knicks for The Athletic. This is KFTV's Knicks training camp tip-off week. CP the franchise here. Hit that like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. And Fred, in talking about Grimes and talking about Hart, they're going to be two of their most important defenders, especially on the perimeter. But, you know, going in, especially from last year and now coming into this year, they're smaller now. And one of the issues last year was going up against bigger wings, bigger fours, guys able to just shoot right over them, despite them, you know, staying in front of them and playing excellent defense, guys just being able to shoot right over them. I mean, what do you think about this team going in here with, again, no true wing, RJ questionable, and then Hart undersized at the 4? What do you think about that defensively when it comes to playing these bigger guys and also from a rim protection standpoint?
Okay, I'm going to say something right now. It's going to sound like a knock on Obi Toppin.
Yeah.
It's not a knock on Obi Toppin. It's just it's a commentary on his style, okay? Yeah. I'm also going to say something that's going to sound like innuendo. And it kind of is innuendo. It's not about your size. It's about how you use it. Obi is a power forward because he's 6'9".
Yeah.
And he's a power forward. The way they used him, spot up shooter. And that was kind of it. The reason, if you're watching the video of this right now, the reason I'm looking off to the side is because right now I'm looking up Dante DiVincenzo's offensive rebound rate, which is 4.7%. DiVincenzo, by the way, he's a good rebounder for a shooting guard.
Yeah.
That means that he recovered 4.7% of his team's misses while he was on the floor. Obi's was 3%. Obi Toppin's a power forward because he's tall.
Yeah, yeah.
But they had trouble against those 4s in part because Obi struggled defensively. He struggled with where to be defensively. He wasn't necessarily protecting the rim or anything like that, which is why Tibbs never really wanted to play him and Julius together. Right. He was great in transition. He was a great cutter. He was underutilized as a pick and roll threat. No question. And there were other ways where they absolutely could have used him in a better manner. But obviously what they want from that role is somebody who's going to hang in the corner and cut and make the most out of his off-ball opportunities. If DiVincenzo is getting more rebounds than Obi Toppin, and Hart is getting more rebounds than Obi Toppin, and while Josh Hart is way smaller than Obi, I don't think anybody would argue, like, he is way more physical. He's a way more physical player. He's way more defensive minded. I do think their roster is weird. They need some kind of switchblade wing. I mean, everyone does, but they really do, because they just don't have that. They need somebody who can play the 4 and can be like a modern day 4.
Yeah.
You know, that would be a really big thing for them. Play the 4, play the 3. Like, that would be absolutely massive for them and a huge help. And I'm sure why we keep hearing the OG Anunoby stuff, because like that's like the height of that player in the form of a role player, you know? However, I don't think switching out Toppin for DiVincenzo is some sort of massive slashing on their size, even though it's sending out a power forward and bringing in a shooting guard, because DiVincenzo is pretty physical, and DiVincenzo is a good rebounder, and he's a really good long rebounder, as is Emmanuel Quickley. Like, that bench unit, even though it's small, I actually think is going to rebound well. Hart is an amazing rebounder. Hartenstein is a great offensive rebounder, okay defensive rebounder. Hart is incredible on both sides. DiVincenzo is a really good rebounding shooting guard. Quickley is a really good rebounding point guard.
And you may have RJ in that mix too.
And RJ is a good rebounder too. Like I don't think rebounding is going to be a huge problem for them. And you know what? If it is, would not be shocked at all if Tibbs just played Hartenstein a little more with the starters and Mitch a little more with the bench. He likes Mitch with the bench. I think a lot of people like Mitch with the bench. Mitch is good with the bench. One thing that Tibbs was really into Mitch's plus minus numbers last year. He thought they were like, Mitch had excellent plus minus numbers last year. And Tibbs like thinks, after looking at everything, Tibbs like, oh, that's real. Like the plus minus numbers are not lying. So I think if he sees, oh, there's a problem here, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, let's plug it up with Mitch. Okay, well, we're getting outscored with this lineup, but these are good players. What's the issue? Just put in Mitch. Let's see if that works. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw Mitch with the bench unit if that unit was a little bit struggling. Now all of a sudden we're talking about like, all right, well, who cares about the rebounding? Now you got Mitch, you got Hart, like literally everybody there is a good rebounder for their position. So there's a lot of options I think they could go to. I don't think rebounding is gonna be a huge problem for them. I think also part of it, for what it's worth, they think, including Tibbs, they think that Mitch is such an incredible offensive rebounder. They think so highly of him as a rebounder in general, that they think that his mere presence on the floor is enough to make you a good rebounding team. Like they think he's that good. So I think part of this is just like their faith in Mitch. I think part of this is them being like, oh yeah, we can be smaller with feisty guys who are really good at long rebounds, because Mitch is he's just gonna vacuum up all the short ones. Yeah. And then we have all these guards who, like DiVincenzo is great at chasing down long rebounds. Hart chases down every single loose ball imaginable. Who was it? Spoelstra also who had the quote about Hart that like, who had the quote about Hart that said, like, for most people, they're called 50-50 balls, but for him, they're 73 balls.
Spoelstra, yeah. And Spoelstra, yeah.
What a great quote. He should be a beat writer. Why does he not step down and become a beat writer? He'd be so good. He'd break everything down. He's putting out these great quotes. That's, I wish I wrote that. What a great line. It's so true. That's exactly how it feels. So I would, Quickley is extremely good on long rebounds too. And gets a ton of them. So I honestly don't think rebounding is going to be a huge issue for them. I think the bigger issue is going to be guarding big wings.
Right.
I think that's going to be the bigger one. And that's what we're going to see. Like, okay, is it Hart? Is it Grimes? If they have an issue guarding a great big wing late in the game, and it has to be Hart because he's just outplaying Grimes on that guy, and then Grimes sits during crunch time because of it, now you got four guys who are, not spacers on the floor around Jalen Brunson in crunch time. How's that going to work offensively? Like, those to me are the bigger ones. But I'm not totally concerned with their size because their physicality is good.
Yeah, no question. But
you agree? Like, how do you feel about this?
I agree with you in that rebounding, they should be okay. Especially with the second unit. I think all their guards, for the most part, are solid rebounders. When you think about Quick, RJ, Grimes can get his Hart, DiVincenzo. Like, I think they're going to be fine on the boards. I just feel like, as you said, defending those bigger wings is going to be a test. I mean, you look at these first 10 games, they've got Boston twice. So they've got Tatum and Brown. You got Milwaukee in there. The whole Giannis thing in Middleton is always going to be an issue for them. They've got the Clippers. So you've got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Look, the Cavaliers don't have bigger wings, but you still have Mobley. You have Donovan. You have Garland. They're going to be tested defensively as well. So I think they're going to be in for it. I don't know how they make up for not having the versatility at the wing position. I mean, these guys, they can be in position all they want. They can be there. They can have the good footwork. But if a guy is just going to be able to shoot right over you without as much of a contest, sometimes it's just not much you can do. And there were certain games last year where I saw that with the Knicks, where they would have Hart out there, they have Grimes, they would have McBride, they would have Quick. They're better defenders, and guys are just turning over their shoulder and just putting the ball right over them, right into the rim.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's going to be so big for them. I actually think that's a bigger problem in the postseason than it is in the regular season. I think in the regular season they'll mostly get by because most teams don't have that dude. You know, most teams don't have Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
like most teams don't have Pascal Siakam. Even like the regular season, I think you can get by on that. I don't think it's really going to hurt them. I still think they're going to win a very good amount of games. In the postseason, though, it'll probably depend on matchups. Like, look, part of the reason why Cleveland ended up being a good matchup for them is because we saw what Mitch did to their bigs. And Cleveland is so big man focused. And then Mitch just played by far the best basketball of his entire life. Right? Like he was
absolutely.
I maintain there is a good argument. I mean, I walked away from that series saying Mitchell Robinson was the best player in this series. Like he was the number one reason they won that Cavs series. He was absolutely insane on both sides of the floor. And he clowned two, like I know Knicks fans were like, these guys, they're not legit. Look at how they shrunk.
Yeah.
Look at how they shrunk against the Knicks. And I honestly kind of look at it the other way. I'm like, no, don't demean Evan Mobley because he struggled in his first playoff series when he was like 21 years old. Like this dude's going to be awesome. I walked away from it with a different thing. Not like, wow, these guys shrunk. They're not legit. Like, holy crap. These guys are really good. And Mitchell Robinson just wrecked them.
Yeah.
So what does that say about Mitch?
Yeah.
What does that say about what he's capable of doing in the playoffs? And the other part of it is Cleveland has good guards and the Knicks have some feisty, physical, good defensive guards. RJ really stepped up his defense against Darius Garland in that series. I thought that was the best defense he played all year.
Yeah.
Quickley is obviously, excellent defensively, and Hart did a good job in that series and they handled their guys. If Cleveland had a really big wing, if they happened to go up against Giannis in the first round, even if Milwaukee wasn't as good as they were, like I think they would have struggled.
Yeah.
They struggled with Jimmy Butler for good points of that series. And there's a reason, even though Butler actually was not amazing for the last part of the Miami series, like there's a reason why. Like they didn't have that dude. And at some point, if you want to progress in the playoffs, you're going to have to go up against like a top 10 player who's a wing. That is probably when it comes to bite them. However, if they get to that point, whether it's in the first round or the second round, after winning 45 to 50 games during the regular season, and they really fight hard and they're well coached again, they play their asses off, and they have a good competitive series, even if they lose in the first round, I think there's a world where we walk away from this season being like, you know what? Still encouraged by this team. 3 out of 4 years in the playoffs, really competitive series, won a series the year before. Like this was just a bad matchup for them. They're in the spot to get the star. Embiid's about to ask out. You're bringing him in or whoever it might be. Like, I think they're more worried about that. They're taking a longer view on that kind of stuff. Like there's a world where we walk away and they win 46 and they lose in the first round. And we're like, that's a good season. It's a good franchise now,
Yeah, absolutely, man. And RJ, what's the version of RJ that this team is gonna need to have a successful season? He went into the FIBA camp. He's got some I guess some basketball under his legs going into the season. Is that the buffer against a slow start, having that experience and going into the FEMA tournament, getting his feet wet, then rolling right into training camp? Is that what we're hoping here? That experience kind of prevents the slow starts and kind of those peaks and valleys of his seasons that he usually has?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, for him, it's really all about decision making. It's so important for him. I mean, I know everybody talks about the shooting, and obviously you don't want that to be at 31%. But the reason that he was good during their playoff run last year was because he made good decisions.
Made great decisions. Yep.
It was clicking for him. I don't know what happened to him defensively during the last regular season. To me, I thought the worst part of his regular season was his defense.
Yeah.
Because he's better than that. He was not good defensively during the regular season. Like he wasn't. And he was good in the playoffs. He did a good job, especially in that Cleveland series. He did a good job in that Miami series. Like he was good. And he cares about defense. He's not one of those dudes who like blows off defense. So I've been confused about what happened to him. I don't know the answer. I know it's my job as a reporter to find out the answers, but sometimes I just can't do it. I don't know why defensively he just fell off. Cause like a couple of years ago, he was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did a good job defensively. He was progressing well, fought hard on defense. I mean, on opening night last year, he was the guy who was guarding John Morant the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did do a good job.
Right.
But that was how they opened up the season. Like Tibbs was like, this is the dude. And he's not just going to guard the other team's best player. We're using him against like small, quick twitch point guards, you know? So I was surprised by his season defensively. I think defensively, he needs to get back to where he was. I wouldn't be shocked if he did. That to me is a huge part of him progressing. And it doesn't really get talked about. People talk about the threes and the tunnel vision and all that kind of stuff. And to me, the second one is just like getting a little grimesiness to his decision making. Grimes is just so quick.
Yeah.
Like we talked about. He is just he is so decisive. You never see Grimes get the ball and be like, what am I going to do? RJ will predetermine a drive every once in a while. He'll miss an open guy on the wing. He'll miss a swing pass. You never really see him make a swing pass, you know, like if he adds that kind of stuff, which he was better at during the playoffs last year. And I think he was, at times we saw him be better at that with Team Canada. I think that's the progression for him. And by the way, if he makes quicker decisions and makes better decisions, the percentages are going to go up because the bad shots are going to go down. Yeah. And the bad shots are bad shots because they're low percentage.
Yeah.
So like the percentages will go up. 3-point percentage will go up. The field goal percentage will go up. I'm not saying he's going to be some sort of knockdown 42% 3-point shooter, but the efficiency will rise as his decision-making does. And to me, that is like the thing I would be concentrating on with him. Like it's so much more important than anything else.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that you can hope to find some consistency in is his decision-making, right? Because so far we've seen in his career is that he's going to have those peaks and valleys in terms of efficiency, right? Those months where he's just like red hot from downtown and then those other ones where he can't throw it into the ocean. But his decision-making is, I think, is one area that he can really rely on to be consistent night in and night out. And if you combine that with his ability to get to the free throw line, knock it down better than 75% or so, and being able to attack the rim with the aggression that he has, that can get him from the 19 that he had last year to maybe 21, 22, maybe 24. And with the decision-making, I look at him running with that second unit. I really want him to own those second unit minutes because it's an opportunity for him to go up against opposing team second units, impose his will from an aggression standpoint. But then you have Quick on the outside. You have DiVincenzo on the outside. Maybe you have Hart, where maybe Hart's feeling good about himself and he's knocking down threes. You have your guys that can knock it down, and playing off of RJ, I think he can really own those second unit minutes and really command it as his time to shine.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's so true. Tibbs loves him with the second unit. Like I totally think he's going to be the dude who plays with the second unit. And there's one thing that I'll add. That second unit's going to run a lot. And that's a good opportunity for RJ. Right. RJ's good in transition.
Yeah. Yep.
He's good at knowing when to leak out, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be really big for him too, because that second unit's going to play much faster than their first unit, which shouldn't play fast. I mean, that first unit has a ton of you should play to your personnel.
Yeah.
And that first unit had a ridiculous half court offense last year, and their personnel plays slow. So let them play slow. They're really good at it. Like you don't want to get Chris Paul and then run all the time. You want to have Chris Paul and have him break guys down the half court. I feel the same way about Jalen Brunson. So they shouldn't be playing it. The second unit should be just exhausting everyone, including the referees, you know, like when that happens, like, I don't know, like Ed Malloy should just be like, crap. Oh, I am I'm exhausted. Ken Mauer's watching on TV. He's
Yeah.
like, this is why I retired.
Yeah.
Because of this second unit. That is why. That is what should happen with that second unit. And I think that would be really good. That'd be really good for RJ.
Yeah.
Ed Malloy, by the way, with one of my favorite technical signals in the league. Tiny T. He's got a great tech call. It's fantastic.
That's funny, man. Once again, we're talking to Fred Katz, covers the Knicks for The Athletic. KFTV's Knicks training camp tip-off. CP the franchise here. So to everybody in the chat, hit that like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Quickley, outstanding year last year. I was so impressed and so happy about his Sixth Man of the Year campaign last year, finishing second in the league. His versatility, being the defensive signal caller, right? Kind of like that safety of the quarterback of the defense. His improvements offensively, especially from the mid-range. His versatility as a starter versus the bench. I mean, there was no drop-off. The team just played better with Quickley on the court. Had the drop-off in the playoffs, which we still can't really put a finger on what it was. What do you think about Quickley in this contract year for him? Number one, do you feel like they're gonna get a deal done before the October 23rd deadline? Let's start there.
I would say it's more likely than not that they get one done. I think, like, they like him.
Yeah,
they know how good of a player he is. They know retaining him is important. And I think the one complication is that this team is constantly on the hunt for a star. They're constantly waiting for somebody to ask out. And if you extend Quickley now, the extension doesn't kick in until next year. But because the NBA CBA is just a freaking mess to deal with and is so complicated, and I'm not going to explain all the reasons now, but if he signs the extension today, which doesn't kick in until 2024, he is really difficult to trade before 2024. Just like matching salaries becomes an extremely complicated venture. And it's not impossible, but it's difficult. And the Knicks know that if they want to go get a star and somebody huge ass out in the middle of the year and they have a legitimate shot at him, Quickley's probably going to be in that deal. Like, because we're talking about a ginormous MVP caliber player, whether it's Embiid or somebody else, right? And you're not just going to, like, the other team's going to have to get something good. And Quickley is, there are teams who think Quickley is their best young guy, you know? So he's probably going to have to be in that, and it would complicate that issue. I do know that the Knicks believe it's more likely that a star will be available next summer than this year. They also think it's important to make sure that he's locked up on a decent contract. So I would say more likely than not, they extend him. I don't think it maybe happens till closer to the October 23rd deadline. When in doubt in the NBA, assume that everyone is a procrastinator. But so I think it happens closer to the deadline. But yeah, I think more likely than not something gets done. It just seems like the best thing for both parties.
Yeah.
Like, keep a really good player and man, quickly, like, go get paid, you know?
Yeah. I certainly agree on that. And the message that the team is going into this camp, it's a message that's been shared by the media, a message that Tibbs has preached. It's about the continuity. It's about internal development, internal improvement. And I love it because when we look at previous regimes, that hasn't been the case. I mean, this is a team that turns more than half the roster over constantly trying to find the right pieces and try to build around this guy, and it's never really worked. And so I like how they've been methodical and patient in terms of building. They've gotten improvements. They hit their home run in getting Brunson. They hit a triple in getting Josh Hart, and that certainly improved the team. And even though while they do wait for this star, the prospect of being stuck in no man's land is always there. I look at this team and I see a young team, manageable contracts, young players who, are they ceilings defined yet? It's questionable depending on who you're looking at. So I'm not so sure they're in a bad position, right? Because they have this young team. They have these manageable contracts. So the stuck in at the middle point, which some GMs don't like, or some analysts don't like, I don't necessarily think that's the case with this team.
100%. Like I one thing I don't like about the way that some people analyze the NBA is that they think of it as so cookie cutter in terms of team building. Either you're breaking it down or you're a contender. And what people leave out is that there is a step in between. Almost nobody goes from first overall pick to contender in a year.
Yeah.
You got to build up. The Knicks are good. What is the point of all this if you're not going to be good? Now, you shouldn't be irresponsibly good. You shouldn't give up everything that you have and give up your whole future just to get to 44 wins. But if you can be responsibly good, then be responsibly good. That's a lot better than being responsibly bad. And the reason why is because it's a lot easier to go from good to great than it is from bad to great, especially when you're an organization like the Knicks, where you're in New York City, you're the freaking Knicks. And if you're good, somebody will want to come to you. You will be able to make that trade for some star and who you think you have a really good chance of retaining. This isn't a small market or something where you have to build in a different way. They have guys on good contracts. I don't even consider the Fournier contract a bad one anymore because I don't think expiring contracts are bad contracts. They don't have any bad contracts on their books. They have all their own draft picks. Yeah, the protected picks don't have a ton of value because they're heavily protected. They don't have a ton of value in terms of like going out and getting someone fantastic. They do have value in terms of going out and getting somebody good. I mean, because they have those protected picks, they were good with just giving up their 2023 for Josh Hart and lottery protecting that. And then it just gets expunged after a year, like that can get you Josh Hart. If they're okay midway through the year or better, I imagine they'll try to upgrade at the trade deadline. And that's a scenario where it's like, okay, if there's a player who makes $20 million a year and would really help them, and they're like, oh, this is the wing they could use, you could trade Fournier and you throw a pick in there. Like you throw the Dallas pick in there. It gets you something. And now you're good. Maybe you go to very good. Maybe he does for you what Josh Hart did for you last year. They're in a very good position. I don't believe they're in no man's land. I believe a team that's in no man's land is like Minnesota, where they were treaded around 500 last year and they gave up their whole future.
They gave up everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did that to tread around 500. And now they have this massive Gobert contract, which is not team friendly. They have this massive Towns contract, which is not team friendly.
Reed got paid. Ant-Man's got to get paid. And
exactly.
The wings got to get paid. Name slipping me right now.
Yeah,
but
McDaniels
has to get paid.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay him. I mean, the good news for them is they have Anthony Edwards, who is that dude is going to be like, he's already obviously very good, but he's going to be unbelievable. Like he's got a real chance being like a top 10, top 5
for sure. For sure.
He's that talent level. So maybe he's so good that he saves them. But that's not a place. Like I'd rather be the Knicks than the Timberwolves.
Absolutely.
The Timberwolves to me are no man's land.
Yeah.
When I covered the Washington Wizards and they had traded their pick and they were, they had these bad contracts and they had Jan Mahimi on a 4-year, $64 million deal. And also they could fight for the 8th seed. Like that was a team in no man's land.
Yeah.
That was no man's land. I don't think the Knicks are in no man's land. I think the Knicks are in a very good position for both the present and the future.
Yeah. Good points. Good points as well. Just a couple of quick ones for you. As we mentioned, Fournier, what are the chances that he goes back to being a model citizen and, just sits there in purgatory while this team kind of waits to use his contract for the deal they want? Or is there a chance where this thing blows up and he's like, send me home, and they've got to work out some sort of dissolution?
I'm going to make a prediction that could completely blow up in my face and be 100% wrong. I think the whole thing with Fournier is going to end up being fine. He's such a popular teammate. Like, everybody there really likes him. He's such a popular guy. Even last year at the end of the year, when he kind of, as soon as they lose the Miami series, he kind of lets all his true feelings out to the media, right? And I was standing right there, and he's like, this was a frustrating year. I mentioned that their season ended that night. He was like, well, my season ended months ago. Look, man, French people are extremely honest.
Yeah.
I love all of the most honest players I've ever covered. They're like all European, like not just French, like it's just a European thing. They're just so honest, And I think the reason he was saying all that stuff was because he was like, I'm gone. It's fine. Like, this isn't going to upset anyone. I'm going to be on another team next year. It's fine. Yeah. And then he gets frustrated over the summer when he's like, damn. And I understand why he got frustrated. I don't think the way that he said the things he said and the specific things he said were good at all. They were a bad look. But I understand why he'd be frustrated. Like, it's not like he's old, and he's not going to have a good free agency next summer if he just plays through the whole year with the Knicks or ends up being bought out or something. Like, he's going to get a minimum or something, So I understand why there's the frustration, and he's a really competitive dude and he wants to play. However, he also said after that Miami series, basically, I forget the exact quote. I think he said, we're like, if you were feeling this way, everyone talked about what a model citizen you were. Like, how are you showing up like that? He was like, what am I going to do, bitch and mom? Yeah. Like, what's that going to do for me? I feel like that's more his character. And then he kind of bitched and moaned throughout the offseason, like multiple times, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just him being really honest about it. What he also hasn't been historically, he wasn't this way in Orlando. He wasn't this way in Boston. And he wasn't this way with the Knicks. What he hasn't been is a jerk to his teammates. He's a well-liked teammate everywhere he goes. And I just don't think he's the type of person who's going to come in and take it out on his teammates. And I think his teammates might be like, yeah, I get it. I get why you said that stuff. Now, I don't know if Tibbs loved that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think Tibbs.
Didn't seem so.
I don't think Tibbs loved it at all. But I'll tell you one thing about Tibbs. Tibbs doesn't care who you are, what you do. If you are Mother Teresa or you are, I don't know, who's Ted Bundy. Like, if you guard and you shoot well, he's giving you minutes, like that's all he cares about. Those are his morals. And if Evan comes in and he works, which everybody said he did last year, I don't think it'll be a problem with Tibbs. I don't think, Evan's going to be Tibbs' best man at his wedding, but I don't think it's going to be like a problem with Tibbs. I would just be surprised if this guy who was just got along so well with everybody in their locker room just all of a sudden showed up and didn't, just totally changed his character because he was so unhappy. It just doesn't, I don't know. I've been confused by the whole summer, to be honest, but I just don't see it. But maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe he's just so honest that he's like, I'm not dealing with this.
I'm not doing it again.
On all of you, I'm making you all miserable, but I just don't see that from him. I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't either, but you just never know in the NBA, right? We've seen it time and time again. Expect the unexpected, but hopefully it's something that the Knicks can maintain.
Totally.
Now,
I mean, I'll add one thing. Like, sometimes words are just words. Like, whenever Mitch complains on Snapchat about his playing time, or complains about how like Tibbs won't let him do crossovers, like his teammates just laugh. Like, his teammates think it's funny. Yeah. Like, last year he had this whole thing about I forget exactly what the context was because he did it like 18 times, right? And and one of the times was him complaining about like him not closing a game or something like that. And obviously, him saying like that, like he should have played more minutes, means that he is saying that he should be playing over Hartenstein.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you go and you talk about with Hartenstein, and he's just laughing. He's like, Mitch, you're such a clown.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he just doesn't care. Like him and Mitch are like, they're tight. They are Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not even that they're tight. They're like ridiculous together. they are so, you should see them like pregame.
Yeah.
They are ridiculous. Like I was during one of the playoff games last year. It was game 2 of the Cavs series, and they're like down 1-0. Or you know what? Maybe it was game 5. Mm-hmm. Or maybe game 4. I don't know. No, it was at MSG. So it was, I don't know. It was one of the Cavs series games. And the two of them are just like, Mitch is trying to get, or Isaiah's trying to get Mitch to come to Germany. And Mitch is saying, or to go to Latvia or Lithuania, because that's where Isaiah played for a bit. And he's like, Mitch, you would like it there. And Mitch is like, I'm not going there. And Isaiah says, you'd like it. There's hunting, there's fishing. And Mitch says, I can do all those things in Louisiana. And they're just giving each other crap. And, Mitch says, I was an All-American. Like, what were you? And Isaiah, they start insulting each other. Isaiah says, please, I was a pro when I was 15. And Mitch goes again, like, yeah, like in like a random country. And like they're going through the whole thing, and they're just like a bit, they're just a bit. And as it was before a playoff game, and I'm standing there, I'm watching the two of them, I'm laughing. They know they're entertaining me. And Mitch starts to walk out of the locker room to do his pregame routine. And I said, my legal first name is Matthew, not Fred. And Mitch found this out. And now the two of them specifically only call me Matthew because they're Beavis and Butthead. And Mitch they finish this ridiculous exchange, and Mitch starts to walk out to the court. And I say, and I say to him, I was like, Mitch, if I like go on the radio later and they say to me, what was the vibe in the locker room before the game? Did they seem tight? I'm going to be like, they definitely were not nervous. And Mitch just looks me up and down and he goes, Matthew, you're such a loser. And he walks out.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, these two are like, that's what they're like. And then Mitch is going on Snapchat and complaining about how he should be playing over Isaiah. And that's the reaction to that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes words can just be words when you know somebody well.
True.
And if you know somebody's character.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people in that locker room who like Evan. So maybe they'll just look at that as that, because that's kind of what they do with Mitch. Like, I do think Tibbs cares about the Mitch stuff. I do, because Tibbs is very no nonsense. So I do think he cares about that and doesn't want distractions and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the players care. I think the players are just like, Mitch is at it again. I remember one time he put up a Snapchat thing, and they were like, they were all joking about it when the players told me, they were like all joking about it on the team plane. Like they were all passing it around being like, stop doing this.
Yeah.
Stop doing it.
Yeah.
Like they just thought it was hilarious. And like Evan's comments obviously had a different vibe, and Evan's a very different personality than Mitch, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just an optimist and I see the good in people.
Yeah. Well, like I said, man, time will tell. We'll have to see how it plays out, but hopefully it doesn't cast a dark cloud over the Knicks, man. You're looking around the NBA and you look down the turnpike, see what's going on. You're just glad that this team is operating with sense of normalcy and approaching training camp with professionalism and some fun, and enjoying themselves and building some more chemistry as they head up from Charleston to New York, I guess, over the weekend. Now, preseason starting up in a couple of days, and then by the end of the month, the season kicks off. 47 wins last year, 2 games away from the Eastern Conference Finals. Are you crowning the Bucks and the Celtics at the top of the East? I think between 3 and 4, the Knicks are right there. 3, 4, and 5. I think they're right there, and I think they can finish there. What's your predictions for the season?
Yeah, I think 3, 4, 5 is good. I think I'd have them more in 4 or 5. I know Knicks fans will kill me for this. I'm gonna have Cleveland 3.
Okay.
I loved their offseason.
You like the Bruce and the Yang pickup?
Yes, I loved it. I mean, look at what happened in that series last year.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't find that fifth guy.
They couldn't.
And it wasn't Okoro.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Osman.
Yeah.
Wasn't and for one game, it was Karis LeVert.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it's like they went out and they identified their biggest problem. We don't have that fifth guy. We need that fifth guy because the Knicks just honestly, Tibbs had a great series against Cleveland.
Yeah.
Their game strategy was fantastic. And the Knicks just poked holes in what they were. If Niang is open in the corner, dude's hitting that shot.
Yeah.
He's like a 40-something% corner 3-point shooter.
Yep.
And not only that, he's kind of like a power forward version of Grimes offensively, where he's that extremely quick ball mover and decision maker. And Strus, I mean, we've seen what Strus can do in the playoffs. I mean, that's a good player. That's just a good high volume. He's not an unbelievable 3-point shooter, but he is a good 3-point shooter, and he's a great spacer. Because let's be real, a white dude who shoots 38%, you just won't leave.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
You're not leaving.
That's always how it works.
Yeah.
Spacing and shooting, you can be a better spacer than you are a shooter. And I think Strus, like people think Strus is European, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So they don't leave him.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny. Like I talk to players about that stuff and it's like, hey, you can't leave the European. Never leave the European dude. Ever. So it's like some guys are just better. Strus is like a very good spacer and he's a good shooter. So I like what they did, and they're really young. Like we're talking about RJ being young. Evan Mobley's like 2 years younger than RJ.
Yeah.
You know, and that dude finished second in Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to be awesome this year. And Jared Allen is still a really good player. It's another year of Mitchell and Garland gaining chemistry together. Garland's insanely young.
Yeah.
Garland's 23, I think. And he's so good already. He's a wonderful player. And so I think that team is deeper. They have another year of chemistry together. They're still young. They're going to get better. I like that team a lot. I love their offseason. They did a really good job. And then I think it kind of depends on what happens with Philadelphia. Does James Harden play? Does he get traded? If so, what does he get traded for? Do they just become a total incomplete mess because Harden plays? Do they become really good because Harden plays and he's a model citizen? Like what the heck happens? And so I think it's kind of dependent on Philadelphia, but I would have the Knicks 4th or 5th, somewhere in there, and with a chance to win a playoff series, depending on the matchup. I will say, I think everybody's gotten a little ahead of themselves by saying it's Boston or Milwaukee. I'm not convinced that's the conference finals. Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't be the two favorites. Boston has 6 awesome players, and then they're really shallow. But amongst those 6 awesome players, like Al Horford's 37.
Question marks.
Kristaps Porzingis is often hurt. Drew Holiday's 33. What happens if Boston is missing 2 of those guys in the playoffs? Or what happens if Porzingis misses a long chunk of the season?
Yeah, which is a possibility.
And look, like I remember Boston was when the Knicks were trading Alec Burks. Boston was the team they talked to. And part of the reason that Boston liked Alec Burks was because they wanted to be better with resting Brown and Tatum, limiting their minutes, giving them off days. And that was one of the things they concentrated on more. And they just kind of wanted like a wing who can fill in on those days. They thought would be really helpful for the regular season because Burks is just like such a good switchblade off the bench
everything
player to the regular season. Like he's just pretty good at everything. And he's also super close with Jason Tatum. He's married to Jason Tatum's sister or something like that.
I think, there's some some family connection that way. Yeah.
He's married to one of Tatum's relatives, and they're super, super close friends as well. And like, I don't think Boston's just going to get away from wanting to not overwork those guys in the regular season. What happens if they have a couple injuries? like to like Porzingis, which I mean, last year he was healthy, but
Yeah.
it's 1 year. Like, what happens if Porzingis gets hurt and Boston is the 4 seed, and then Milwaukee's the 1? Like, they can't meet in the conference finals. They're gonna meet in the second round if they meet at all. So like, there is a way to get to the conference finals for another team. You know, what happens if Milwaukee's perimeter defense is just not good enough and they get carved up? Like, I actually think Cleveland would match up great with Milwaukee because they have the front court guys.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that just because Allen and Mobley were bad in the playoffs last year, they're just bad in the playoffs forever. I think Mobley should come back with a major edge this year because that's what awesome young players do after playoff series like that. And Milwaukee doesn't have that perimeter defense. They don't have that guard defense. And Cleveland can just bomb threes against you with Mitchell and Garland, and they can slice you open. Like, if Milwaukee is relying on that front court to hold them up, then, like, you know, maybe they beat them. We also don't know about the coaching. Like, Joe Mazzulla is still a question mark, and Adrian Griffin, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Never seen him be a head coach. We don't know. I mean, I covered Adrian Griffin when he was an assistant with the Thunder. He was really well respected as a basketball mind. He had kind of been a head coaching candidate for a little while before getting a job. A lot of people say he's awesome, but you just never know.
Yeah.
Until you see it. You just don't know. And maybe he ends up being an amazing coach, but he's not an amazing coach in his first year because coaches develop just like players do. It takes a while to learn. So there are question marks about those teams. Like, I'm not convinced they're on some sort of collision course and nothing will get in the way.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about last year, where Miami was trending towards, I don't think anybody saw them climbing all the way up from the play and all the way to the finals. So you just never know. Milwaukee's drop off with the Freaks injury and then losing Miami in the first round. I think last year, look at the Lakers. The Lakers flipping their season around by the trade deadline, then going all the way to the conference finals. So, hey, I mean, I looked at the East as being a bit more wide open before the trade, but I agree with you. I think Boston's going to have those question marks with the age of their veterans, the durability. I thought their bench was already kind of questionable even before the trade. And then with Milwaukee, offensively, they're going to be prolific. But how do they defend on the perimeter? Are they going to be relying too much on the rim protection of a Giannis and a Lopez? How do they defend out there? Plus the coaching advantages. And so for the Knicks, I think they have an ability, the opportunity to be there. I just hope they don't get off to a slow start. Like I said, those first 10 games are pretty tough, man. You got to see Boston twice. You got back-to-backs against Cleveland. You're in New Orleans. You're in Atlanta, who, yes, they downgraded a little bit, but you just never know, especially early in the season. You got to see Zion and Ingram early. Clippers coming into town early, so they won't be the Los Angeles load management. So you can expect Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to be there. So the first 10 is going to be quite a test. I'm hoping that the Knicks can have like a Cleveland type of start that the Cavs had last year. Really get off, shoot out the gates hot. Hopefully it's led by their defense in case their offense takes a little bit of time to get acclimated.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of mental fortitude too, I would say. Like last year, how many times did we think at the beginning of the year, like, oh, yep, that's the season.
This is it.
This team's awful.
Yeah, yep.
Everyone's gone.
Yep.
The whole coaching staff is out.
Yeah.
Like it happened in the Thunder game.
Okay,
like, that was 13 games into the season. Yeah.
Hawks game.
The Thunder game was exactly. The Thunder game was 13 games into the season. We're like, oh man, 142 the Thunder, which by the way ends up being in retrospect like whatever.
Yeah,
Number
pretty
one,
regular.
Because 142 is just a normal score in the
normal
NBA
night. Yeah.
That's like, wow, I can't believe the Thunder only scored 142 points.
Yeah.
And number two, because the Thunder are like good, like legitimately good. And they're going to be good this year too. And like, you know, it's like, why do they keep giving up triple doubles to Josh Giddey? Because Josh Giddey is going to be awesome. Man. That's why.
Yeah.
Giddey averaged Josh Giddey's 21. He just averaged 16, 8, and 7 or whatever, like 16, 7, and 6, whatever it was. Like that dude is so good. Mm-hmm. But then there's the Mavs series, and you know, it just felt like, or the Mavs game, I mean, where they had that awful third quarter when Luka and Tim Hardaway Jr. outscored the entire team in the third.
Yeah.
And we just thought they were done. So many times we we're like, this team is not good. It's kind of too similar to last year. It's just not good. And they go on this run. And after every single time, what did they say? They were like, no, we're fine. Like, it's a loss. We lost the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. We'll come in tomorrow and we'll forget about it. They really did that. They were very good at compartmentalizing. And I know it's a cliche in sports, but I've seen teams that don't do that. I have seen teams that don't do that. And they have mentally strong guys. So it's, if they get off to a 4-6 start or whatever, like, and it's because they lost to Miami and Zion went nuts against them, because they don't have a lot of, they might struggle against Zion. Now that I'm thinking about that, like, that's a good matchup for him.
And they haven't seen him in a while, man. Yeah. You know, it's been a while.
No one has.
Right. No one has.
He's like Bigfoot at this point. Yeah. But like, you know, that happens. It's fine. If they're 4-6 and it's because they look like a mess on defense, and because, oh my God, every single team is scrunching the floor against them, they're guarding their offense completely differently than they did last year, now that they know what they are, and they can't hit a jump shot, then maybe there's cause for concern. And it's like, oh, the league figured them out.
Yeah.
Last year, this team was unbelievable on offense, and now the league figured them out. But like, I think it kind of depends more on how it happens. It's not like a 4-6 start. I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, that's it. I'm not doing that anymore.
Quality certainly matters, man, for sure. But man, Fred, we're looking forward to this season. Good luck to you as you cover this team throughout the entire season, man. Hopefully you'll be back on the show as we get through different intervals, man, and check in on the progress. Enjoy Charleston, enjoy the weather, enjoy the food. Make it back up to New York safely, and we'll talk soon, man. Good luck this year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I will obviously come on anytime you ask. You have a great show. You've done an awesome thing here. Like, I listen all the time. Like, you do an incredible job. So always honored to come on.
Thanks again, man. Looking forward to the next one.